Jenny, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. For those tuning in, Jenny Jess is the founder and CEO of Peak Six, but also Poker Power, which I became aware of when I was invited to an incredible event at this gorgeous mansion. And you were teaching, I knew how to play, but you were teaching us how to play and what that does and how it changes us and enables us to become better negotiators, create more wealth. So I'm excited to dive in and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's go back to before the Poker Power movement. What did you do before? And then what got you thinking that, there's a problem here and women aren't taught early on some of these life skills that men are?
For sure. Happy to get quickly started because it's not a short amount of time that I've been working on this career. And so if we go back to the beginning, I grew up in Wisconsin. I always wanted to live in the big city. That was Chicago for me. So when I went to University of Michigan, my only goal was to get there. And I happened to get a job because I would work anywhere if it was in Chicago on the Chicago Board Options Exchange trading floor. So screaming and yelling, all men, big men usually, buying and selling stuff all day long, every day. And, I grew up with four brothers. So it was kind of, like home to me, just ignoring the ridiculousness, but also it was a great opportunity for me to learn. And I think the biggest thing I learned down there was transactionally how to think about money and taking risk about money every single day, every minute of every single day. And I was super lucky to be able to learn that. And I didn't know it, of course, at the time. I was just doing my job, right? I was doing what they taught me to do. And I wasn't honestly great at it in the beginning. And it wasn't natural for me. And so I'm buying and selling equity options, which means I'm buying and selling a derivative product of a stock. So, the thousands of stocks that are out there, the ones that have a lot of volume also have options that trade on them. The right to buy a stock in the future or the right to sell a stock in the future is basically another asset class that we're doing all day long. But for guys, honestly, it was quite natural. It didn't even sort of matter that it was this extended product. They were just really good at engaging in this opportunity to buy something from you that I think is going to go higher or I think is going to go lower, and you do the reverse, and let's see who wins, right? Yep. It's like their play. It was like their hobbies. It was like anything they had ever done before. And for me, it was completely foreign. And I was definitely, a fish out of water. As time went on, though, I basically kept my head down, and I had an opportunity to build a new department so at the company I was working at, they eventually did a joint venture with Swiss Bank, which eventually UBS and Swiss Bank became one. And so I kind of became an entrepreneur, right? I built a business inside of somebody else's business I was in my mid-20s when I did that. Yeah. And so my future co-founder of Peak Six and myself, he did it with me. And so we had that experience. We learned what it was like to start from nothing and do something. That business very quickly became massive for the bank. And when they were moving, so they were moving their headquarters, we're like, well, we're not going to move because remember, I wanted to be in Chicago. So they were moving out to Connecticut. So we said, well, we'll just stay here and do it again, which was quite comical because the business we were doing was same thing, buying and selling these equity options, but it was with companies. So think right. Microsoft or General Motors or Wendy's or, large financial institutions. So all of a sudden, like we're two people in a room and we're right. 20-somethings. They're not going to do it.
And you left the company at that point.
We did. We left the company at that point. But what we were trying to do is do a partnership with a bank, because we knew how to do this, but the big banks kind of didn't. In fact, one funny story is that Jamie Dimon, who runs JP Morgan, of course, yep. He was at First Chicago at the time. And so we literally were at the 11th hour of doing a deal with First Chicago. So they would be the balance sheet. So a company like Microsoft, if they want to sell put options as part of their share buyback program, they have confidence that, the transaction can actually happen, from beginning to exact bank behind you. Yeah. So we never did that deal. Of course, Jamie eventually left there, and we never even did that business. But what we started doing was using technology um, to do what we had always done by hand, right? Everything we were doing on the trading floor was writing a ticket and literally tearing off the ticket and putting it in some little slot that, looked like a little tram that went down, and someone typed it in. So we started using technology really early on. We definitely weren't visionaries. We didn't want to, at the time, there was also only 4 exchanges. So now there's many more exchanges, but we didn't want to populate those San Francisco, Philly, New York, Chicago floors. I didn't want to hire more people because we didn't know how to manage people. So we were sort of doing everything we could to make it work for ourselves. And someone said, "Oh, you can use technology." This is in 1997. So we really became one of the first ever off-floor equity options trading firms. Of course, today everything is traded off floor. I mean, yes, there are some exchanges that still, on floor activities that happen, but almost all of it happens off, right into the ether, and not physically standing in a trading pit. But we were definitely one of the first, if not the first. And I don't know that actually anybody knows that answer. And very quickly, we started to compete with the big guys, the biggest hedge funds, the biggest banks, the biggest institutions in the world in this product. And we were able to do that because we were trained by some of the best. But we also were comfortable in building out our own way of doing it because nobody else at this point really was doing it. Because we didn't really have a choice. Like, again, I don't see that what we did was as magical as now it looks in retrospect.
Right.
But that business today has been around for 27 years, has never had a losing year, and it made us the money that allowed us to do all the different things we did. So one of the reasons why Peak Six is not a well-known name is we never had to raise money to go and do the other things we did because we just made our money.
Wow.
So over that time, over the last 27 years, we've, I sort of stopped counting because maybe it's embarrassing. I don't know if it's good or bad thing, but we've started or bought and usually turned around. We usually buy sort of failing-ish companies, more than 15 companies.
Wow.
Primarily in the fintech space. So that's where we lead. And I think the biggest name today that's will likely be a public company in the future is Apex Fintech Solutions. So if you have a retail broker dealer on your phone where you buy and sell stock today, or options or crypto or any of those things, 65% of those roughly, we are the back-end technology for that
Wow.
today. So think SoFi, Webull, eToro, Public, Stash, you name it. So when Robinhood got their start, they started on our technology. After 6 years, they left. When the GameStop fiasco happened, I always like to say they were gone from us. Some of those bad things wouldn't have happened if they had stayed, because they were quite new at doing what they were doing at the time. But so we custody and clear all those trades for over 25 million customers today.
Wow.
On that side.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive on its own. And then I'm sure, and I'd love you to share, what did you keep encountering with women that made you go, all right, I need to also add this new idea, this new movement to my plate. And I'll just give a quick story. I started playing poker when I was probably 13. My brothers were 5 and 4 years older than me. And they would have poker nights with their friends, and some of their friends were really cute. So I wanted to sit at the table and gawk at them. But I started learning poker and how to negotiate and, how to have a poker face, which I've been told now I'm very good at. Thank you.
That's right.
But I think between, like you said, having brothers and that experience, it made me comfortable at the table with men. I've never felt like I'm a woman there. Like I never had that difference of feeling that so many women I meet have. And I'm curious what you noticed in your journey that made you decide that this was kind of the reason to launch.
It's super interesting thing about, well, first of all, it's fascinating. I did not know you played poker when you were 13. Okay. And I find it fascinating the number of successful women I meet since we started talking about it who learned to play poker growing up.
Yeah.
And particularly in the finance world, but I find it fascinating that you grew up playing poker. And because nobody talks about it, right? Because of the poker players in the world, there's obviously over 100 million. Nobody really knows what the number is, but for sure less than 10% are women. And then you see the women who are doing fascinating things, right? Adina, who's running the NASDAQ, for example, or Lynn, who's running the New York Stock Exchange, or Margot Cook, who is running Nuveen Advisory Services, $1 trillion in assets under management. And here you are running your fashion empire and you grew up playing poker. I find it incredible because it has been sitting under our noses. This game has been around for hundreds of years. Right.
Yeah.
And we have presidents and, our one, previous, I don't know if Kamala plays poker, but Hillary grew up playing poker. Chelsea grew up playing poker. I literally just found that out. There is something in this game that changes the mindset and changes the approach. Now we can go to that. I will go back real quick. What happened, what I saw at my work. Of course, I didn't see women for a very long time.
Right.
And so just to get a woman to say, hello, I want to be part of this. So and as being a woman in that position, I tried multiple times. We had 2 fails of different women's programs that we started. I would say the second wasn't a massive fail, but it didn't grow, right? We were able to, pick a couple apples from the apple tree. We knew very few women who wanted to be in options trading, which is what we were mostly doing for, at least our first 10 years before we expanded more on the tech side. We started something called the Women's Trading Experience and eventually Women's Technology Experience. It'll be 9 years ago. And I said, we cannot fail. No matter what we do, we have to find these young women to come. So everybody we bring in, especially in the trading side, we bring right out of school and they don't know anything about this business. So we usually say, if you're hardworking and you're curious and you have an incredible work ethic, we're going to teach you. By the way, we're going to pay you to teach you about this business. That's how fun and fascinating it is. So we started the program. Of course, today we only take juniors who are going to be seniors. But at the time, we could get so few people. We had freshmen and sophomore people who just moved on. We needed to fill every hour of every day. That's what I said. I said, we can't miss a beat anywhere that these women are having an amazing time because I cannot lose them. I cannot figure out why this is. And this is only 9 years ago. Yeah. And so our teacher, our options education teacher, very good poker player, and we are surrounded by poker players in our industry. And I never cared. This was like me not caring what my brothers did when I grew up. You guys are wasting your time. It's just a dumb boys game. That's what I thought. But he was going to teach them poker. So he did. So we started this program 9 years ago. Today we have almost 31%, what I call female allocators, women making decisions around money, which is massive, massive compared, for sure in the trading industry, it's under 5-6%. At the biggest banks in the world, they're going to tell you they have, half women, half men. But the number of women who are actually making decisions around the money is way less. So that was the key for me. But at that point, poker was just a filler.
Right.
But it was proving out my thesis before I even know it. When my daughter was 14 in 2019, I'll just tell you a quick story. So her dad was at her tennis match. She was losing. He's very competitive. He was frustrated. And he came home from her tennis match. She's a better athlete. She should have been winning, and she wasn't. How old is your oldest now, by the way?
13.
13. And but your daughter is?
My daughter's 10.
Your daughter's 10. Okay. So, and of course, he's not going to, he wasn't going to say stuff to her. So he comes and sort of, tells me, she may as well be hitting against a wall. She may as well be hitting with her teacher. She doesn't realize that there's someone on the other side of the net who's strategizing, who's thinking about what's going on in the game.
Right.
And what you should do next. He just sort of flippantly says she needs to play poker. And by the way, he's not a poker player. He's more of a blackjack guy. But of course he knew, right? Because they all know growing up somehow. And I ignored it. Like 2 weeks later, I was like, should I teach my 14-year-old daughter to play poker? And then even when I say it now, right? Like it's offensive to people. Like, And it was, it's offensive to people.
Offensive because people have a connection to gambling, or why is it offensive?
Yeah, it depends on the people. We are trying to change that, of course. At the
Right,
time, it was offensive to me because I was like, I would never have asked that question about my sons. And so
right.
I can't believe it's 2019 and I'm asking whether I can actually do this with my daughter and not be looked frowned upon.
Yeah,
So of course, what I do an experiment because I've got the entrepreneurial bug. I get 10 girls, the moms wanted to do it, 10 girls, 10 moms. And literally we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for what happened at those tables. So we did 4 1-hour lessons. That's what I asked for commitment on. And a woman taught. And I always say from lesson 1 to lesson 4, literally the sky's open for these young girls. Like
yeah,
they went from like whispering to each other to giving away their chips if someone lost their chips, to sitting up straight, peeking at their cards, and like nobody was going to take those goddamn chips. And I
right.
was like, what happened? And the confidence, which is oozing out of them. I mean, today we've taught at over 300 companies. We're in 60 countries because of those girls. That's how powerful it was watching them at the table. And whatever they do or did or did not know about poker, remember, these were 8th grade girls.
Right.
8th and 9th grade girls. So but at the time, what I didn't know, right? So I'm learning the game too, because I didn't know how to play. And as I started to watch and see them play, I was like, that looks like that meeting I was just in. That looks like that negotiation I just did. That looks like that deal we've just been talking about. And I started to use it like, what cards do you think they have? What cards do you think I have? Who has the bigger chip stack? Where do you think they're sitting at the table? Who's in the dealer position? And I started to use it as a framework with my partners. And then they started to use it back because, most of them are men. And it occurred to me, this is exactly what I was missing, especially as when we're now simultaneously, right, seeing these women come into, this the aggressive money table in the world, right, these trading rooms, and that it's working for them,
Yeah.
that they are taking those skills. They are recognizing, right, so first of all, poker, like chess, mind sport, it's actually a proven game of skill. And at the end of the day, you have cards, but you're playing the people at the table. You're playing this game. And when you enter into a market, when you enter into a deal, it is about the people who are sitting across the table from you.
Yeah.
And how do you interact? And how do you make decisions? How do you take risk with incomplete information? Because you don't know what cards they have. And now more information comes out. Those are the cards that come out on your table. And now you have to decide what to do after you've already maybe put chips in or not. And so
Right.
each one of these levels of the game is extraordinarily sophisticated, right? This is a lifetime game.
Yeah.
That's why the young men who are learning when they're 10 and 12 and playing again when they're 16 and they're in college, they're getting all of these experiences with all these different guys that they're playing with at the table. So when they get to their job, that's just second nature for them.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be in a fast-paced trading world for the exact same thing to happen in any boardroom or any business meeting or any deal or any negotiation.
I can attest to that. We were the furthest from the board trading floor, and we would be in negotiations with our factor, which is like a fashion focused bank. They lend on POs.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it was just a game of bluff, right? We're like,
Right.
don't worry, the goods are on the boat, when we knew the goods weren't on the boat or whatever.
Right. Well, and it's always something, right? Because you actually don't know, right? You only know what you can assume and until you get to know the person, right? Who am I actually playing with?
Yep.
An
Yep.
aggressive person, a loose person, a really conservative person? I actually don't know. And once I feel that out, and that's what that poker table just mimics those experiences. So then when you get to the table, you start to go, oh, that looks like something I've seen before. How do you
Yeah.
get good at anything? By practicing, right? And all of a sudden women are thrown in with no practice in their first job, of course, the gentleman's going to take the risk with 60% confidence, and the woman needs 90+% confidence. It's just, this is not about skill at all. That is one of the, which we all knew that to begin with, but it really has come like glaringly through the message to me that this is just about practice. They just have practice doing this.
Right.
And so that's what we need to do. We need to move the practice up. And so obviously that's what Poker Power is for. Our goal, of course, is to get to 1 million girls and women playing this game, which is fascinating, right? Because it's been around for hundreds of years and we still don't have that many playing, right?
What would you say if you were trying to get my listeners to stop going out for girls' drinks and girls' dinners and be like, set up the poker table, enroll at Poker Power, start playing? What have you seen, or a story you could tell about someone who, you told the story of your daughter, which I love, but like maybe a woman who is in their first job, and a difference that has happened because she now goes into negotiate or thinks in a more strategic way?
Oh gosh. What I love about what's happened is the testimonials that come in, and they come in all the time. And the range of testimonials we get is fascinating, right? So that one that happened really early on, and I'd like to tell this one because I feel like it's more profound, and the other ones I'll be more tangible about. But like, this is a senior woman at a large bank, very senior. And she came and played with us. Let me start at the beginning. First of all, it's fun. There's a reason why men are playing, because it's fun.
It's really fun.
It's just fun. And you don't have to play. First of all, Poker Bar doesn't play for money. And you don't have to play for money, because men will tell you that you have to play real poker. You just play to win the chips, right? That's what you decide. Of course, some people are going to choose to play. But so when you get the women in the room, first of all, you might all do different seniority levels, all different lives, wherever you come from, but you're all starting at the same spot. There's very few things we're all starting at the same spot. None of us know how to play this game, including myself when I first started. And so within sort of 90 minutes, you are playing, and you can continue to practice to play on your own or with friends. But, it's going to take a little bit of building of time. And so it's a great regular event to do. And of course, Poker Power has an app today, so you can do it with your friends visually on the app. But so this first, one of these very early on ones, which really inspired us to keep going, was a very senior woman. And when she came back so she had played on a Friday, Monday morning, she goes, I was thinking about it over the weekend. And I realized, this is all it said, I wasn't playing to win. So all of this time in her career, like, I'm doing what I'm told, I'm doing what I think is right, but was I playing to win? And I, honestly, what is winning meaning? And I think this is all very individual to the person. But if you think about if you are, if you aren't, let's just assume you aren't. What would it look like to play to win? And when you start to sit at the poker table, you see your options open up. I think one of the things I see, of course, is the ability to take risk. A high percentage of the women will take risk a similar way when we teach them poker, right? So they call it limping in, but it's, I just want to test the waters, right? And poker is a game about aggression. And so just that first step, how we start, our teachers are, first of all, they're hilarious, and they're so engaged in trying to get you to go somewhere you haven't gone before. And it's a really safe environment, right, to do it, because you don't feel stupid, because you're all in it together. But I think that was really profound. But I will tell you, when I think about the different types of women who show up, right, the nutritionist who shows up, and she says, how I talk to my patients is different because I played poker. Because when I realized that this is not a straight and up to the right type of experience for them. They are going through something, and I need to help them. And there's going to be setbacks. You're not going to win every hand. So how do I connect those things? It's the HR executive who says, I'm trying to be, the chief people officer, and I'm not quite there yet. And I see my boss and the way she manages herself in really high emotional, situations. That's why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Or, the ER nurse who just has to get better at fast making decisions quickly, right?
Yeah.
So I'm at this, I could just keep going stories. A real estate developer who closes her biggest deal and says, I never realized I could check. So check basically means I can pass. Somebody asks me a question, I don't have to answer. I
Right.
can let them answer first. The point is I have a choice. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was part of the game that was going on, just because they asked first, or they said they wanted to see where I was first. I would never have closed it if right? Or I would have, of course, the classic one is the negotiating for a salary,
Yeah.
because we just don't do it.
I would even venture to say in personal affairs, I had to bluff in front of my now husband when we had our first, I wouldn't call it a date, but we had our first date and he was like, I just want to let you know I'm seeing someone. And I had to bluff. I had to be like, that's fine. Let me know what
Yep.
happens. I was smoking a cigarette. I took a deep breath. I was like, let me know what happens with that.
Of course.
That answer made him go, oh, damn, maybe I want to end this other thing. But if I'd been like, shown my cards or been like, oh, I thought
I
this
know.
was paid. I thought we were whatever. Like he
Right.
and like, who's this desperate girl?
Exactly.
And I think it can change. Not that you want to bluff with your partner all the time, but I think there's
Right.
that game and there's that dance in the beginning
It
where
is. It's a strategy. We talk, I mean, first of all, people talk about poker and life being similar all the time. That's not abnormal. And we had one of the women who started playing with us write an article about and it was in Forbes actually about love
yeah,
and in her dating life and poker. I mean,
yeah,
it's very similar. What you start to realize is um, bluffing is part of a strategy, a means to an end. It's not necessarily lying. You may have done nothing, right?
right.
And so it's the interpretation of the other person and how you want that to be. And by the way, and what they're doing, I think it's the opening, we really open women's eyes to what actually is happening in that room, in that moment, in that whatever that sort of negotiation is, between people, and especially men in their professional lives.
Yeah,
And because if they're playing a game, I mean, we might not want the game to be played the way it is, but I can tell you, if you can't get in the game, you can't change the game.
correct.
So in order to do that, again, I will go back to, it's fascinating to me that you grew up playing poker, and which is so cool. And uh, another feather, in our cap for what we're trying to do, which is why I love it. And I didn't know it, but it opens up the possibilities. The risk reward is thought about more diligently, because I don't just go to my immediate default answer from however I grew up and whatever experiences I had before. I can actually have sort of a framework for thinking about how to solve this problem and the many outcomes that are possible, right? Because when I'm in a game, I might have gone down a path. I see this a lot, especially with our female founders, which you know so well, and they're going down a path, right? And if I'm in and the wrong card comes on the turn, which is, there's 5 cards that eventually could be put out on the table, but if that 4th card or that 5th card are going to make you lose a lot of money,
Yeah.
you don't want to lose more money,
No.
right? So how do you stop that trajectory? And you have to practice stopping those things, because they're really hard decisions to make. So
Yeah.
there's so much connection, particularly for our female founders, because they had the courage and the gumption to go, but when the really bad adversity happens, you think you have a really, really big hand. And by the way, you still might lose. Now, what do you do? How do you stay in the game? Or how do you get back in another game?
Yeah. No, I watched my former co-founder, my brother, and our general counsel, before every major meeting where we needed something, the strategy, the planning. And in the beginning, my naivety was we're just humans talking to humans. They have to just know that by us being earnest, honest people, that they're going to empathize with what we're going through and want to help. And they were like, no. And I think sometimes women use that
Right.
nurturing that we're born with and is natural to us, or the caring or empathy. And in business and sometimes love, it does not help us. And I think what I love about what you're doing is it really shows you how to think with the strategy, how to play that game. Just like I would watch every time we had these crazy moments that happen in business. And oftentimes we would win because they would play out the deal 5 moves in advance. If she says this, you do this. If blah, 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 and then blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, wow, they're really overthinking it. But then it would,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And I think um, being as knowledgeable as you can be, right? When you're going into, high stakes scenario, which as a founder, it's like every day is frankly high stakes. Um, that's where it's actually a real tool in your toolkit
Yeah.
to be able to do that. And then, by the way, over time, building up your risk appetite
Yeah.
so that you can stand your ground. You can actually bluff,
Yeah.
right? And you can actually use the different types of strategies against the different types of players. I mean, literally, I personally had that scenario last week, and I'm working with our lawyer who's like, no. And I was like, yes, right? They're bluffing, or I'm not doing the deal. I recognize the downside if I'm wrong,
Right.
but that I could take the easy way, which is less and complete, or I can take more and better, or have nothing. Now, my risk appetite, of course, at this point in my life will be different than other people's, but at some point, if you want your sort of your money journey to be different, you have no choice but to take risk. First of all, your money journey is never up and smooth and to the right. It's like your relationship with money is like any relationship. There's going to be good moments and there's going to be bad moments. But the more you have those bad moments early, right? So that you recognize it when you see it, so you can get out, so you can cut your losses. When we talk about trading, I don't know, did you see, I thought it was great when Roger Federer did his commencement speech this year, and he talked about how many points he went back to all his matches and how many points he actually won. Did you see
No.
that?
No.
54%.
Wow.
Think about how many points he lost, right?
Yep.
And the irony is that's actually very similar in trading. So we trade all day long. We buy and sell, and we roughly win some 55% of the time.
Right.
So I had this amazing experience that got me comfortable doing it. So if we get our young girls doing that, playing hand after hand after hand at an early age, teaching them about money at an early age, there's a significant opportunity to increase the comfort level.
Yeah.
And then in the knowledge base, right? Risk reward is like a conscious decision about downside and upside.
Mm-hmm.
And we still might choose to do different than what a man chooses, but at least I go in eyes wide open, as opposed to they were playing a different game
Yep.
than
Yep.
I was playing.
Yep. So you mentioned an app. Where can everyone find and play and connect?
Yeah. So pokerpower.com, we have an opportunity there where you see more details about what we do every day. We are teaching at companies. We are teaching in women's groups like Female Founder Collective all the time. We are teaching in groups that people bring to us. So we do it virtually or in person. And then, of course, on our app, people are playing every single day. We have live games that are happening multiple times a day, but you can also practice with bots. And you can create your own games and schedule your own games with your friends. The thing I love the most, so one of the things with actually my husband's There's a lot of women on his side of the family, and we will get together. And so you're all on, looks like FaceTime, but you're basically around a poker table, and you're playing the game while you're chatting and talking. And so you have the opportunity to compete, which is really fun. And you don't have to be in person every time. But of course, the in-person can't be beat.
Right, right. I love it. You've inspired me. I'm going to teach my 10-year-old, even though I think that's maybe a little young, but
No, it's not. I will tell you, we talk about 7, 8.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And you're teaching parts of the game, as you go along. You can even just start with cards, higher or lower with jelly beans, right? Like you get a 2, what do you think the next card's going to be, right?
Yeah.
For the little guys. But there's all kinds of things you can do, just getting them comfortable with numbers. And I think for the young girls is being the sole decision maker around the destiny of some resource they have, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
I love it. So before I let you go, I always end my podcast with 2 questions. What would we be surprised to know about you? A quirk, a habit, fun fact that not anyone knows or very little people know. And then a piece of advice you'd like to pass on that you either learned the hard way from someone, from a lesson and failure, or that someone gave to you that was actually helpful.
So I don't think I ever talked about this. This is funny because we were just mocking me for this. So I like to do puzzles. And I always say I'm a right brain person in a left brain world. And I think as part of the thing that's been helped me to be successful is to be different. But we were laughing because, what is a puzzle? It's a picture and you take it apart and you put it back together. Like whoever figured that out, it's so ridiculous. But I do think it's meditative. I think that's why I do it. Right. And I think years ago I had done it for a long time. And during COVID, it sort of came back.
I think when you're stressed out too, it's incredibly takes your mind off of whatever's going on. And
it does.
I love it for that. We did a lot of puzzle making this summer, which was quite nice.
Yeah. Well, and I wish when my kids were little, when they were more your age, so my kids are 19 and up. And I have 3 boys and a girl, by the way. Too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. As they get bigger, they don't have so much time for puzzles. So it's kind of sad.
Take advantage while they're young.
Exactly. And I think in regards to your other question, I would say one thing we learned at Peak 6 through trial and error, but something maybe I knew all along, is, we obviously today, several thousand people at Peak 6 in our different companies, but where we were bringing up people through college, it was the smartest person, the best person to hire. And I wasn't the smartest person when they, I'm sure I was a token female at the time I was hired. I could answer math questions quickly, and when you're going to a trading floor, that was interesting. And of course I was female, but my dad had always said every day is a work day. So I grew up with that mentality. He was a doctor, and he went to work every single day, the weekends, my whole life. And we did some different experiments with different, groups of people that we brought in. And if we were to say one thing that has really helped us succeed over the years was hiring people with a strong work ethic. And it doesn't have to be the smartest person. It is the most passionate and the person who's willing to devote the time and effort. And I know you're big on or not big on the work-life balance question, which is there's no balance. There's not. No, there's not.
For anyone.
But it feels really good when we're doing something and learning something and growing, right? And so challenging ourselves, that's what ends up happening when you really put your muscle behind what you're doing. So
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for what you do. Thank you for providing an actual tool to help women instead of just women should just be supported and empowered.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. My one last sentence on that is that for years I was quiet, right? It was 24 years. I never said anything. And I always said, because I'm not options trading, back-end technology, not super relatable. And I said, if I ever found something, I would go and do. This is the risk for me, right? Being a public person. And when I saw poker, I knew it was it. So
I love it. Thank you for taking the time. It was nice to
so
see
nice to see you. All right, take care.
Okay.
Bye.
I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I also want to ask you to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it actually helps with search and algorithms. So if you love this podcast, it is an easy way to get it more visible and out there. I also want you to follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Minkoff, at RM Superwomen, and be sure to check out my book, Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. Thank you again, and you will hear from me next week.